What would you like to say to the winning side of this referendum?
Well, I mean, I want to congratulate them on their win, first of all. That's, a resounding win. But from the winners of this, they've largely sold their message on negative campaigning around fear and things. And the real challenge now is to actually get the positives out of this decision about how we make this region go forward without amalgamation. And they need to think about that. I congratulate them. I'm not taking away the resounding defeat. And their tactics were clever and they worked. But it doesn't take away the challenges we still have as a region, socially, economically, job-wise, population-wise.
And on the other side, what would you say to the losing side that worked with you pretty hard on this campaign?
Well, I think it's naturally disappointing. And I want to thank the people, the 1,000-odd people that started this off, the core group of people that have been there through the whole journey, that have funded it, put their time, effort, energy, passion into it.
Some of the other folks who were involved in this campaign, the community types like Rebecca Turner, Kevin Atkinson, Simon Tremaine, some of the others, do you think that they can continue to be harnessed in some way to move the Bay forward in some way?
I think so, but I think a number of them have, this is a big blow to them because they have so much optimism and passion about the region. Most of the people that supported this did it for genuine philanthropic sort of reasons, that they actually wanted the region to be better. They didn't expect any gain out of it, they just saw things could be done better. And I think once they've got over the initial summing up of the result, they'll draw their own conclusion and will still be very supportive of the region.
Do you think this campaign could have been won?
I used to think so. This time yesterday, well, before 4 o'clock I did. I immediately thought we would lose just. That was my initial reaction. So I was shocked by the scale of the defeat. I think we had a number of things going against us which were bigger than I probably thought. So I was confident we could win. Based on polling that Better Hawke's Bay had done months ago, I thought we were behind them, but we could change that margin.
What are some of those bigger things against us?
Well, I think Auckland has been a compounding factor that I never anticipated when we looked at this journey 5 years ago. The view of the rest of New Zealand is that Auckland has been a failure. I don't believe it has actually, but that's the view, and that's been negative for the campaign. I also think that we underestimated the fact that a lot of people did not see the proposal that was put up as the best, particularly the big voting numbers. So the people of Napier and Hastings actually saw very little value in having Wairau and Central Hawke's Bay as part of this mix. And when I initially looked at this, I only had Napier, Hastings and the Regional Council put in. So when I was door knocking in Hastings, I was resoundingly told that it's just ridiculous to bring Wairau or Central Hawke's Bay into this. We should just concentrate on Napier and Hastings. And the third thing that has happened over time is that 5 years ago we had a mayor in Central Hawke's Bay and a chairman of the Regional Council who were largely supportive of amalgamation with myself. At the last election, the dynamics changed and we had 3 mayors who fought opposing amalgamation. 2 of them are new, and they very effectively got together and ran a very effective negative campaign.
So let's come to you then. Do you think you're an asset or a liability to this campaign?
Well, I think I'm a bit of both, actually. I think for many I was seen as an asset because I have a lot of knowledge and experience. I'm the most experienced local government politician at my level. But equally by others, I was seen as a liability. We never managed to track which was, better, one or the other, but clearly there are two points of view on that.
So in the most general sense, what do you think the voters were saying yesterday?
I don't actually know. What they were saying is they didn't like the structure. The thing I don't know about is, were they saying they want some things changed, or was the result so resounding that they said actually everything's fine the way it is? And I don't know. I don't actually know from the vote what that answer to that is.
Wouldn't you think that the danger here in this outcome is that people would interpret this as a vote for the status quo?
Correct.
As opposed to a vote against this particular plan?
Yes, I think that is. I mean, a lot of people I've talked to today have said, look, people just don't want to change Lawrence. This is just how they like it. And so I'm taking that on board. I'm trying to assess what the result actually says, and I'm doing that by talking to people, saying, well, what do you think it means?
Are you aware that the no vote in Napier is greater than the entire yes vote across Hawke's Bay? So effectively, Napier exercised the veto they always were worried that they might not have in this.
Yeah, no, I haven't done the numbers.
Debate.
That doesn't surprise me.
It's actually the case by a few hundred votes. There were more no's in Napier alone
than the rest
than
of
yeses in the rest of the region. Yeah.
Stunning.
Given the issues that you've felt, though, that we had to address, do you think this outcome is it crippling to Hawke's Bay? Is it a disappointing slowdown? How serious is this?
I think it's critical. It's about what we do about it now. If we're just going to ignore those issues because they're not the purview of local government, or we can't get a united way of what we're going to do about them, then it is going to be critical for Hawke's Bay. So I think the challenges in the next 3, 4, 6 months, a year, to say, what is the plan now, guys? Now amalgamation's been rejected. What are we actually going to do differently from what we've done in the past? Because what we've been doing in the past has led to a series of statistics, which are very damaging for the region.
Would you agree that, amalgamation aside, the voting public expects a higher degree of collaboration amongst councils now than has historically been the case?
I think so. One of the things one would argue, and I would certainly argue this, that if the amalgamation conversation hadn't been going on in Hawke's Bay, we would not have made the progress we've actually made, even though it's been small, on shared services. The international evidence would say that when people are threatened by amalgamation, they really look at shared services. When no amalgamation threat, they often go back to the status quo. So one of the challenges will be, what does the status quo mean? Are we still going to do shared services on amalgamation, without amalgamation? And I'm not talking about buying light bulbs or insurance or cars. Shared services, if they're going to have any real meaningful value, will have to get into the service delivery side. That's building consenting, roading, waters. That's where the value can be gained out of shared services. But of course that fundamentally impacts on staffing regimes, people, the things that are actually harder to manage.
Going beyond that, shared services and the efficiencies you would think could be gotten out of greater cooperation, the other part of the case for amalgamation had to do with one voice. So now going forward, we still have 5 voices. In what areas do you think it's important that Hawke's Bay have one voice?
In tourism, I think it's important that we go out to the world with one voice. I'm yet to be convinced about economic development. But if we're going to get a business out of Auckland, who are we going to send to knock on the door? The mayor of the city, a representative of the region. I mean, all those things need to be worked out, and I don't quite know the answer to that yet. But the one voice thing is interesting because in politics, people come and go. So you have one voice 1 3-year period, and you could have another voice the next 3-year period. Why I supported amalgamation was actually because I wanted to structurally embed that one voice concept in a position, rather than 5 and having to try and work that out. And I think that's going to be a challenge for some because there is still a competitive element, particularly between Napier and Hastings, and that hasn't gone away.
I mean, what is at the root of the non-cooperation that is the case till now?
Yeah, I don't really know. There is a competition. So if you go back 100 years, there was a competition about the port. Farmers looked at building their own port at Tiawonga because they couldn't get access to the port at Napier at the time. Now, it's been going on for a long time, the hospital debate. But I look today at the fact that if you go on the expressway in the morning or at night, 5 to 1 the vehicles are coming from Napier to Hastings to work in the morning, going home at night. Yet, as you've just said, 80-something% of the Napier people said we don't want to have a bar of amalgamation. So that's a really interesting sort of dynamic that goes on. Quite happy to use the employment and prosper from the region, but actually we wouldn't want to amalgamate the councils. I'm at a loss to understand some of that psyche.
So during the campaign, during the sort of long-term plan and budget season, Napier put forward a proposal to identify some regional activities like tourism and maybe come up with a regional levy to fund those and set priorities. Is that the sort of proposal that you think could get some traction now, or is there merit
Well, I've
in
always,
taking an
I
approach
personally,
like
I've always supported that type of approach.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to raise it with previous mayors, and 5 or 6 years ago, no support. We don't want to pay any more, the rates are high enough, but actually, particularly Napier now appear to be slightly more open to that. And if we're going to fund regional facilities or tourism on a levy basis, then I think that's probably a good thing to do.
What do you referred earlier to the meeting of the mayors and the
Yes.
regional council chairman. What is that really a sufficient process for now sorting out where are we going to cooperate
No.
or collaborate, or what else can be done or should be done to force that issue?
Well, it's a nice little chat. That's effectively what they are. There's a little bit of an agenda. There's no work program. We just chat.
Mm-hmm.
I think the grunty work will probably be done in the intersectorial leadership group, where we bring actually the entities as well as the councils together with chief executives, and we work out what we need to do. But that's not easy either. You'll recall earlier in the year, Craig Foss put up some targets that we should attain to. We couldn't actually get agreement on what the targets should be, how they should be measured and who should be held accountable to them.
So talk a little more about this intersect, what is that?
It's really a group of council mayors and chief executives and the chairs and CEOs of the government agencies. So the DHB, police, MSD, TPK, Ngāti Kahungunu, the bigger entities in the region that have a little bit more of a public policy space, we all get together. It hasn't done a lot yet. We've only just managed to get a person on board full time that's funded by everybody to make this happen. But clearly that's where I see the maximum benefit coming in that place.
Is that a entity that has a formal terms of reference or anything like that?
Yes, it does have a terms of reference, but it's a non-binding, what I'd call terms of reference. Yes, it does have terms of reference.
Do you think it would have more, if it were given more visibility in some way, maybe some of its meetings were public, that sort of thing, that it could become more of a force?
Absolutely. I really see no reason why they couldn't be public. One of the challenges we face, though, is you have 2 representatives from each council. So you sitting there as a chief executive and a mayor, you actually have no decision-making ability on all of these things. You then got to go back to 5 different councils, put it through a formal process and get an agreement. That's not always easy, especially if the councillors have not been there to hear the conversation that has led to that particular item. So that's a challenge for the regime. One of the things I thought amalgamation might have overcome was everybody's having these conversations together. Now, we might have to look at another forum as to how you bring all the councillors together for all the councillors in the region, once a year or twice a year or something, to look at these macro issues. I think you could put, through the intersectorial group, you could agree annually, for instance, a key set of things you're going to measure. You publish them, you might even get input into them. And at the end of the year, you say, this is what we've done. Some accountability from the general public, because I think the general public do expect some things to change and do expect a maximum efficiency and delivery of things that we can achieve together.
I do think the nub of this, and our elected officials, myself included, fall into a sort of a conclusion that people are pretty happy. And that would be, wouldn't you agree, the most unfortunate reading to take from this? That,
Correct.
Hey, we're all happy, we're doing well by and large, and enough of this, doom and gloom stuff. Let us just go about our business. And
Yeah, I think the unfortunate thing probably is a lot of people here are happy. So the happiness index is great. We're happy. I just don't think we often realise what we could be doing and what our potential is. And one of the things I found sort of most difficult in the reflection since the result is this fact. There's never been a successful amalgamation in New Zealand where the people have had to vote for it, ever. The only time amalgamations have happened they've been imposed by central government processes, most recent one being in Auckland. Every other one where people had to vote, they've declined. In 1989, we had the biggest set of reforms ever. And there was controversy about debt, loss of identity, the rates would go up, all those things. The government pushed it through. People don't want to go back on that. It's been done. It was successful, and people are happy with it. So we have this propensity to rally against change when we get a say in it. But if somebody else does it to us, we're actually pretty amazing at adapting to that change and saying it's okay. And I suppose that's my reflection, where if the government had come in and said, we're going to rationalise Hawke's Bay and this is what we're going to do, there would have been some shouting and screaming. But in 3 or 4 years' time, everybody would have said, well, that's fine, no big deal, let's get on with life. But we're unable to do that sort of thing ourselves, which is a reflection of democracy, human nature, I think, the fear of change, but it is what it is.
Opponents of amalgamation throughout the campaign would deride your recitation of all these social statistics and the low economic standing, and basically say, enough already, we all know about these numbers, but it has nothing to do with local government. There's nothing we can do about this, and particularly there's not any visible impact amalgamation would have on this. Where does that leave the social issues and the whole matter of the poor socioeconomic standing of the region?
I don't know. But I think those same stats are still there today as they were yesterday and the day before. There is no other form of leadership in this region that can actually seek to change some of those things. And I don't buy into the argument that local government has no input. I think we need to change slightly our focus. We need to assume that the infrastructure is properly looked after. That we have the staffing ratios we need, we're doing things as efficiently as we can do. And we need to target and look at some new things for local government. And some of that is around showing leadership in the social, education and other spaces where we're lacking. If the other leaders in the region don't want us to look at some of the other social, economic metrics and those issues, then I'm only one out of 5. It's off the agenda.
So if that turns out to be the reality, where do you spend your time over the next year?
Well, I think over the next year, I've said I've got a lot of things to do in Hastings. The Opera House is a massive project for us. I'm really committed, and I'm seeing some exciting things coming out about how we can redevelop that. I will play my part by all means in doing things that advance the region. But as I say, I've only got one voice out of 5, and my focus will clearly be on Hastings.
The campaign has been very, not very, but at times it's been quite nasty.
Yes.
How do you all as elected leaders overcome that and sit down together and smoke the peace pipe?
Well, I think we just have to. I mean, at the end of the day, campaigns are campaigns. You are there to try and win hearts and minds of people, but time is a great healer. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't like some of the comments that were made, but I accept that they were made in the heat of an election campaign. These things happen. It's over now. We've actually, a decision has been made. The leaders in this region, some of who have made some of those, comments, need to realise it's over and work to the collective good of everybody. That's actually what people want, regardless of the outcome of this.
So, are you inclined to stand for office again?
I don't know at this stage. I've delayed making a decision on that until the middle of next year. I've been doing this job for 15 years. By then I would have been doing it for nearly 15 years. That's a long time. I love it, but equally, this is a significant, thing that's happened in the last few days. I want to spend my time with the people of Hastings in the next, 6 months or so, and I'll make a decision then.
Did you, correct me if I'm wrong, did you indicate at some point earlier on that you would not run?
Yeah, I said if amalgamation didn't happen, I was unlikely to run. So, I mean, that's still probably the position, but I have indicated that because other people are putting, saying you need to think about that, Lawrence. And all I'm saying is, look, this has happened. I've got effectively a year left in the current term of my mayoralty. I'll use the next 6 months to reflect on what I'm about to do, what other opportunities there are, what I might like to do, and then I'll make a decision in June of next year, or end of May, June of next year.
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but this is a body blow. This is an issue that you staked out your reputation on. It was something you put on the table as a better way forward.
Yep.
For the region. 2-1 defeat of it. That's a pretty big political blow, isn't it?
It is. I accept that, and it's quite a big personal blow to me. But I just reflect on the fact that I still believe what I was trying to propose was in the best interest of the region. I'm frustrated and disappointed that actually the people didn't buy into that, but I respect their view. And at the end of the day, part of my role is to show some leadership. And I was motivated by largely a falling set of statistics as a region, a lack of cohesion as to how we operate, and a lack of competitiveness against the rest of New Zealand and other parts of the world. That's what motivated me. So I went about a process, and a lot of others tried to help, but we've been unsuccessful. So I accept the democratic right. I will accept the fact that the people have spoken clearly and said they don't want change, and I'll move on and work within that environment that's been set by them.